Today we are starting with a story that I published on February the 9th of 2022, and it is called Playdate in the Park. As a former social worker, the theme behind this was always something that attracted my attention, and I know it is on the news often enough. Okay. Sarah remembered the day her mother took her to the park. She'd been 6 years old, and her mom had promised a play date with Nita, a little girl who lived in the same apartment building. Sarah and Nita had played together before in Sarah's room with Sarah's dolls. That was almost a year ago, before Sarah's dad left for work one day and never came home. The New York City park was full of children that day. It was sunny but still cold, with patches of snow in the shady spots where the sun hadn't melted it yet. After having been cooped up in the apartment for most of the past month, the children were full of pent-up energy and excited to be outside again. Sarah saw Nita trying to get on the swing set and ran over to her friend. Sarah's mom, Brenda, sat on a bench nearby, holding a styrofoam cup. She pulled a cheap romance novel out of her coat pocket and sipped the hot coffee. The sound of children squealing and laughing quickly became background noise as she was absorbed into the story's drama. And before I finish reading this story, let me see if I can get to my comments on my channel. See if I can find it. Okay. And let me go to, oh, that's right. I can't just click there. I have to actually go into the comments. I forget about that all the time. Okay. Well, let me go back just a minute. Apparently I didn't get it right. And this is, it is not showing that anybody is on today. So I am not sure. I'm sorry. I know that I'm probably missing some comments, and I apologize. Yesterday I was able to get onto it, but I can't today. Okay, so back to the story, and I will try to catch your comments in whenever I go back over the statistics later. I will see them in there and wish that I had seen you. I'm sorry. Mama, came the childish scream, shattering Brenda's concentration. Her eyes flew to where she'd last seen her daughter playing, now just an empty seat, still gently swinging. Sarah, she screamed, frantically hoping her daughter was just being bullied. Bullied she could handle. Mama! The voice was fainter this time, but Brenda identified the direction the sound was coming from. There, that man with the brown trench coat. He could be carrying something in front of him. She dropped her cup, her book, and took off running. Another lady standing closer to the man yelled, "Hey, you, stop, mister!" But he didn't slow down or turn to look at her. By the time Brenda was within 10 feet of him, he was opening his car door and struggling to put Sarah in first. Sarah was still crying and slapping at him, but of course he was stronger. Brenda reached down and picked up a broken brick laying on the ground and threw it, hitting the man on the hip as he turned. Their eyes locked. "Let my daughter go." Her voice was shaky but angry. If you let her go now and leave, I won't press charges. Still keeping eye contact, she reached for another brick, but only found a large rock instead. It would have to do. More people were beginning to gather around. Someone was holding up a cell phone in his direction. Nervous with all the attention, the man held up both hands and quickly walked away, ducking into a nearby alley. Brenda rushed to her daughter and hugged her close. She closed her eyes momentarily, feeling exhausted now that the adrenaline had worn off. She had no choice now. She and Sarah would have to leave the city. Even with the fake mustache and hair dye, she knew the man who had just tried to take her child had been her ex-husband. It had been the same disguise he had worn the day they'd kidnapped the baby Sarah from a Seattle hospital. So that was another example of stories that I like to write with a little bit of a twist at the end, because the mother was reacting exactly how you would expect a real mom to react, but Sarah, obviously, that situation was more complicated than just someone trying to take her daughter. Okay, let me go to, I'm going to try one more time to see if I can get to my comments, because I've been able to every day. I'm trying to use my laptop, and it is not cooperating with me. But I know that I'm getting some comments, because I see them flash across my device that I'm recording on. I see them flash, but they don't stay on long enough. So let me go back to videos, and let me go back to, maybe I can just refresh. Maybe that will be there it is. There it is. Okay. And view in the control room. There we go. Okay. Well, I do have several comments, and I appreciate it. Okay. All right. So the next story that I'm going to read was probably also published in February. And it is the one that I was talking about yesterday. Earlier in one of my previous lives, I was talking about a story that I wrote about Chicken Alaska. And I had never heard of Chicken Alaska before until I did research for this short story. But having done that, I did get a lot of response from those who were reading my stories. And somebody had asked me about Chicken Alaska and if we were ever going to hear about that guy again. So, the story that I wrote was published on February the 9th of 2022, and it is Chicken Alaska, The Saga Continues. And this was originally about a young man who was terminated. Well, he wasn't actually terminated. He was sent off to a remote location, because other than that, he would have been terminated from his job, because the organization had very specific rules that they wanted him to live by. So they sent him off to Chicken Alaska to take care of their business there, maybe? Okay, so let's get into the story. Hey, it's me, Sam. It's almost spring here in Chicken Alaska, where VP McBride sent me after I refused to get engaged, married, or at least appearing to be cooperating with obtaining a family and settling down as a married man. What is this, the 50s? I've done that before and it didn't work out so well. I won't go through that again, but I won't quit this job and I won't let them tell me what to do. It's my life, and if I choose to stay single, they can't stop me. Okay? Bitter rant over for now. Thought you might like to know what I've been up to since I arrived here in Chicken. The answer is not a lot. First of all, there's not a lot to do here in Chicken with a population of 17, and most of those arrive for the summer. I'm working in a rented office space / living quarters. I don't even know why they would put a business branch in this town. It makes absolutely no sense. I could be in Juneau or Fairbanks, and that would even make more sense than operating here in this one-horse town. No, scratch that. I haven't even seen a horse. We drove in on the Taylor Highway, barely making it before the mid-October winter closure. The highway will open back up in February. It doesn't open again until March, really. But until then, the only way in or out is the airport, and that depends on the weather. The company shipped 250 boxes of documents on the plane they used to transport me. Since there's literally no electricity, internet, or plumbing here in Chicken, Alaska, they provided me with a generator, fuel, and a satellite system for the internet. They know I'm not coming out until after March if I get desperate. But I'm going to prove to them that I can take whatever the company dishes out. Plus, the company rep flies in every other week, landing at the Chicken airport with food and supplies. I'm not completely cut off from civilization, but just about. My friend Mark from Boston sent me an email yesterday. To say I was surprised would be putting it mildly. Now, I'm going to stop right there in the middle of the story because the reason I wrote this sequel to that original story on Chicken, Alaska was because one of my readers was named Mark from Boston. That was the handle that he went by when he was writing. And so I used this to incorporate his information into the story to make him a part of the story, which we both thought was pretty humorous. Mark used to be my best friend, but it's been about 10 years since I last heard from him. Not since he ran off with my girlfriend to Vegas. He says he lost my phone number. Sounds a little too convenient, if you ask me. And that's just one of the reasons why I intend to stay single. But my big news came about an hour after that. McBride told me he's holding my position open for 30 days, and if I haven't changed my mind, the company is going to relocate me again. Well, I definitely haven't changed my mind. Not after Mark reminded me why staying single was the best decision I've ever made. So, friends, it looks like I'm going to be moving again. They're sending me this time to Booger Hole, West Virginia. Yeah, you heard me. They're really putting the pressure on. Well, the joke's on them. They can spend all the money they want moving me around the planet to the most remote villages they can think of, but this fella's not changing his mind. I do think I'll try to drag it out here until June, though. They've got the Chicken Stock Music Festival coming up the second weekend of the month, and I can't miss that. And then I put a note at the bottom of the story that said, "Thank you, Mark from Boston, for the story challenge." Yeah, I know you didn't actually issue a challenge, but I couldn't resist. Now, the thing about the Chicken Stock Music Festival is that when I was doing the research for the story, there really is such an event. And it really does take place the second weekend of June. So that would actually be a really cool road trip to take, wouldn't it? And let me see. I'm pretty sure Mark sent me a comment on that one. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Oh, Harold made a comment. He said, "Interesting read. I wonder how long they'll keep him on the payroll. And will he ever be stationed in North Zolch, Texas? A real town, by the way. And I had answered that because when I was trying to figure out what another really funny name for a town to send him to, I actually found a couple more that I might be able to use. But anyway, so I answered Harold and I said, I believe you. Chicken, Alaska, and Booger Hole are both real towns too. I wanted to use Nowhere, Colorado, but it's not really nowhere. It's no name. So I actually didn't choose to use that town in Colorado. And if you know anybody that lives there, I apologize if I sound like I'm making fun of it. I just think it's funny. Okay, and Mark did comment. He said, hilarious. Poor Sam. Think he would have adjusted to chicken better, like a Hallmark movie. Keep them coming, Judy, and make sure I get acknowledged when the book and movie come out. Well, it's never actually even been considered for a movie, but that would be funny. Somebody else would have to work on the script and the plot. But believe me, there's already enough of a backstory where I really think that somebody could make it at least into maybe not a Hallmark movie, but I don't know. If the right script writer came along, it could probably be a Hallmark movie. Okay, maybe a rom-com though, because I definitely want to leave in the comedic element of the name of the towns that he's being sent to. Okay, so I did come up with another question that I wanted to ask my viewers, and so one of the things that I enjoy doing is I enjoy writing, but I would love to learn to play the piano well. So, what is a skill or hobby you've always wanted to learn but haven't yet? And Farmer, no, this is not a sex channel, unfortunately for you. This is just a reading and writing and chatting channel. So what I'm doing is reading stories that I've written on medium.com. And if you've done any writing or on any platforms, then leave your link in the comments and you'll have a fresh batch of people to read your stories or your articles. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the medium.com platform and read my next story that I published also in February of that same year. And this is a short story called People Watcher. Arthur sat at the Cleveland bus stop as if he were any other paying customer of the city transit. He enjoyed watching the people who walked by. Some walked quickly as if they were late for a very important meeting. Some stared at the ground while they walked. Arthur saw smiling people, depressed people, and once in a while someone would be crying or angry. He just watched, never asking anyone anything. It made him feel invisible, but he didn't mind. The bus stop was busy this Monday morning. The bus wasn't due for another 10 minutes, but the crowd kept getting larger. A woman with a baby stroller was crossing the street when suddenly she stopped, frozen in her tracks, right there in the middle of Superior Avenue. Someone yelled at her from the bus stop, but she didn't seem to hear. Traffic was stopped at the red light, but that wouldn't last for long, and soon everyone at the bus stop was calling to her, screaming at her to just cross the street. The woman crumpled and started convulsing. Arthur started to panic. He knew if someone didn't help the mother, both she and the baby could get seriously hurt or even killed in the rush hour traffic. His heart pounding, he broke his rule of not getting involved. Rushing into the street, he picked up the young woman and, pushing the stroller in front of them, got them all to safety. The scene in front of Arthur dissolved. He was sitting in the training booth with the VR headset on, the screen in blackness now that the program had been discontinued. The group of trainers were staring at him disapprovingly and shaking their heads. One finally motioned for Arthur to come over. "This just isn't going to work, Arthur. We don't believe you will ever be ready to leave the home world to monitor these beings on Earth. You've proven over the past 6 months that you cannot retain your detachment over an extended period. Please pick up your new assignment on your way out of the center." Well, some people just can't help from getting involved when they see something happening. It feels real and they want to do something to help. Have you ever witnessed an accident where you felt like you were compelled to help someone? I would love to see some of those comments in the section below. I must have been really on a roll as far as writing short stories, because the very next day I wrote another short story called 4 Confessions and a Murder. Published on February the 10th. Detective Carlson's expression was priceless. 4 individuals had confessed to the crime, and they couldn't all be telling the truth. But who was the real culprit? He studied his notes on the investigation wall and tried to make sense of it. Shaking his head, he realized this was going to take more coffee. I'm drinking tea, by the way, not coffee. Bryson was in the break room adding creamer to his cup when Joe Carlson walked in. He laughed at Joe's expression, tapped his spoon against the cup, and guessed, "Been studying the crazy wall again, Joe?" Joe grunted in response, concentrating on pouring his coffee. "Why don't you just arrest them all, Joe? You know they've all done crimes that nobody's been able to pin on them yet." "Right, and I'd be laughed out of court. There'd be no convictions and they'd all go free." "Just give it a day or two, Joe. Take some time off. They'll all sit in the tank, and you'll get some time to go over the evidence with no pressure." Considering the option, Joe took a long sip from his cup. Finally, he spoke. "You got 5 minutes, Bryson? I just want to run a couple of ideas by somebody." "Anything for you, buddy." Bryson followed him into the investigation room. They studied the board in silence for a moment. "Anything strike you as odd about this, Bryson?" "You mean apart from the fact that 4 people have confessed to the same crime? Well, let's see. The girlfriend says she smothered him as he was sleeping. She had motive and opportunity. His drug dealer says he cut arsenic into the victim's regular drop that same day. He said the Vic owed him money and hadn't kept his end of the agreement. Motive and opportunity. His buddy Bobby said he and the girlfriend were having an affair, and she came to him crying a few days before, and he told her he'd take care of it. He said he waited until the girlfriend left that night, snuck into the apartment, and stabbed the Vic as he lay sleeping. Motive and opportunity. And his bookie said he'd given the Vic a month to come up with the $50,000 he owed him. And when he didn't show up, he and another thug paid him a visit in the middle of the night and put a round of bullets in his chest. Motive and opportunity." He stopped, then concluded, Your biggest problem is figuring out which of them is lying. Every one of them wants the reward money, and if someone else is convicted, they sure won't get their hands on it. His eyes shifted slowly towards Joe Carlson. He realized too late that he'd made a fatal blunder. A light bulb went on in Joe Carlson's brain. That was the missing piece. Without meeting Bryson's gaze, Joe continued staring at the board. Wasn't the Vic your CI, Bryson? Had he said anything in the last couple of days to indicate who he was afraid of, who might have had the strongest motive of all? Bryson took a shaky, relieved breath. He might still be able to talk his way out of this. Not a thing, Joe. Wish I could help. Joe stepped backwards, closer to his desk, and reached for a marker. He stepped toward the board again as if searching for something. You know what's got me confused, Bryson? I hadn't put anything on the board about the reward money. How did you know about it? His left hand hovered near his gun holster. He stared accusingly at Bryson. Could it be that the Vic knew something about you that you couldn't afford for anyone to find out? What was it, Bryson? Was it the girlfriend? Was it drugs? Is that why you offered the reward money? Is that why you took a hit out on him? Well, I never said that I would make a mystery writer. And that is my least favorite, my least enjoyable genre of writing. And so I will probably never be another James Patterson. Have there been any really good women crime writers? Agatha Christie, maybe. Maybe. At first, I thought of Jessica Marple in, Jessica in Murder, She Wrote, but she was just a fictional character. I can't, other than Agatha Christie, I can't think of any other really good, unless it's the Stephanie Plum, maybe, but I think she's a crime writer, but I also think, or I'm not sure if she's the author or if that's just the name of her lead character in a series. But anyway, and those aren't really serious crime dramas, I don't think. Nothing on the James Patterson level, I don't think. Okay, and so let's go back to... Okay, so I am going to pin my viewer's question at the top of the comment section. But the question that I have is, what is a skill or hobby you've always wanted to learn but haven't yet? And I did mention that mine is learning to play the piano, but I don't know that I will ever be able to afford a really good piano anyway, and you would definitely need a place to be able to practice daily, hopefully, to develop any real skill. Okay, and what did I publish the day after that? Okay, so the very next day, or the very next article, I just wrote a little article about a new tool that I had found while publishing my stories, and it's called Zapsplat. They have audio clips, but I don't know if they're if it's still in business. I haven't seen anything by Zapsplat recently, but it was a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun when I find a new tool to help me to create stories or to create other pieces that I'm writing on, or that are just something to stretch your imagination and your mind, and have another tool in your tool belt for writing. So this little article is about Zapsplat. It says, I love being creative, whether it's reading audiobooks for my YouTube channel. I must have already started one then. I must have already started this channel at that time. Or writing flash fiction. I enjoy creating something new just for the sheer fun of it. It may not bring me notoriety or celebrity status or great riches, but it simply makes me feel good. One of the most fun experiments I did while working on my YouTube channel, yes, I have one and no, it's not great, was editing videos. I know that sounds a little backward. Don't most people who make YouTube videos do it because they love getting in front of the camera? Not always. And until recently, I didn't enjoy getting in front of the camera either. And now I'm like, who cares? It doesn't even matter. For me, the fun part was putting it all together. I never wanted to be in front of the camera. If the camera adds 10 pounds and all you're filming is your face, well, you can see how that would go horribly wrong. Editing, on the other hand, takes skill and imagination. And learning is my best skill of all. When I discovered a couple of years ago that Pixabay has short video clips and Zapsplat had audio clips, it seemed like a marriage made in heaven. Here is my short YouTube video experiment. If you think it's interesting, I encourage you to try your own hand at it. And this was, if you go back in my, go back further in my YouTube long form, you'll see a little toy reindeer sitting in the grass, and it was just a funny little thing to do. I don't even think it was like 2 minutes, but it is pretty funny. I mean, it wasn't that it was funny, it was fun to do. So if you get a chance to check out Zapsplat, or if you need free pictures, then I definitely recommend Pixabay.com. Hey Sam, how you doing? Sam likes gloves. No, Sam, I got rid of my gloves once COVID was over. I was so happy to get rid of them. And I'm not in janitorial work anymore, so there's really no need for me to keep them. Okay, my very next story that I published on February 10th was called Too Young to Retire. And it might actually have been like more of a less fiction and more from my real life. Nope, apparently it's a fiction story. I apologize. Okay. And so I'm going to get right into the story. I just got off the phone with Beth. It's Saturday, and I should have been home instead of working overtime on this work project. I should be there with her and the kids. Instead, I'm here at the office by myself, hashing out the details of the company merger, sending emails that probably won't be read until the middle of next week, and setting up meetings for next month. It could all wait until Monday. I know that. On some level, though, I feel like I'm getting a head start. Problem is, it never feels like I have enough time during the week to get everything done. Well then, where is the time that I saved? So, yeah, I should be sitting at the dinner table with my family, hearing Beth and the kids talk about their day, watching them laugh and tease each other, letting Beth cut me another slice of pie, telling the kids they can stay up a half hour later to watch TV, acting like a father and a husband. Why am I sitting here doing work that could wait? No, should wait until Monday. What in the world am I thinking? I know what I'm really worried about. It's the merger. Once the company finalizes the merger, my position might be dissolved, and I've got to make sure the company knows how indispensable I am to its continued success. I really am. As the top sales executive, I could easily find work with any of our competitors, but I'm only 6 years away from being able to cash out my IRA. I don't want to have to start over at this point. I stared down at the paperwork on my desk. It never goes away. You'd think with the 60 hours a week that I give this job that there would be times I could actually see a clear desk, but it never stops coming. Whatever happened to going paperless? It seems to me like there is more paper than ever before. It's not that I love this job. My work is satisfying, but I'd give it up in a heartbeat if I were even 2 years closer to retirement. We could make it work, Beth and me. We've planned it so that the same year I retire, we'll be debt-free and move into that little 5-acre spot near Idaho Falls. It's got a little 3-bedroom house with a porch swing and plenty of room for the kids to run around. We even plan to get a dog, maybe a chocolate lab. I smile just thinking about how idyllic it sounds. I need to wrap this up for the evening. I can feel a headache that's been coming on for a few minutes now. Time to go home. The rest will have to wait until next week. I make a couple of notes and realize that my chest is hurting a little too. Sure hope I'm not coming down with something. I can't afford to take any sick days right now, not with the merger meetings coming up. The tightness in my chest feels like someone is squeezing something harder and harder. I reach for my antacids in the top drawer. Maybe I'll chew on one and just put my head down for a minute, just until it stops hurting so much. Sure wish I was home with the family. Well, when I wrote this, I was like, I am not sure that fella is ever going to make it home to be with his family. And he should have left just a little bit sooner, probably. Let's see if any of my readers at the time that I wrote the story, if any of them caught that. Okay, nope, nobody caught the fact that I was suggesting, just hinting at the fact that he might be having a heart attack. So obviously I didn't stress that enough. Okay, so let's go up and see if we have another one that was written the same day, maybe. And once again, I'm going to leave it at the top of the comments. That the question of the day is, what is a skill or hobby that you've always wanted to learn but haven't yet? Okay, so the very same day I wrote another one. At the time, I was doing a little bit of trading on Robinhood, and I think my experience was very similar to a lot of people's, that when you dabble in stocks and you don't know what you're doing, that some days I would make $1 or $2, and then the next day I'd lose it all, give it all back to somebody else. So I think I probably ended up trading for about 6 months and then realized that I had no real aptitude and I didn't want to spend money on a course because I felt like that would be throwing even more money away. Okay, so this article that I wrote was Scalp Trading and Writing, Just another day of retirement. Since I quit working in August of last year, I haven't set my alarm for anything. I don't wake up with an alarm clock anymore. My last job was working at the local library in 2021, and if I look out my back door, I can see the library from my house. So that commute was non-existent. In fact, when I first took the job, I tried walking to work, but my boss encouraged me to drive it anyway, the whole 30-second commute. Starting my car takes longer than driving 500 feet to work. I haven't needed to set my alarm to get up early since then. The only time I set my alarm is if I have an appointment, and I try to never make morning appointments. Once I was up yesterday, I heated my homemade bone broth and sipped it for my breakfast. Yum. Wow, has it really been that long since I made homemade bone broth? Oh my goodness. It seems like it was just recently. Wow. Okay, back to the story. And fought the cats off because if it's something I'm eating, they're all up in that. Plus, they love chicken flavored anything. I'm really into bone broth now, having been convinced there are health benefits in making it yourself and drinking it daily. And it really is satisfying drink. It's very satisfying. And the first benefit I've noticed is I am sleeping so much deeper and sounder. Okay, I have got to make some more bone broth because I definitely have had problems lately with sleeping very soundly. I tend to sleep very light and wake up whenever there are any noises. Not that I wouldn't want to wake up if there was anybody trying to get into the house or something, but I do like the feeling of sleeping soundly. Okay, so the first benefit I've noticed is that I'm sleeping so much deeper and sounder unless the cats wake me up fighting outside, which has actually happened a couple of times. My son stirred in his room around 8:30 and asked if I needed him to take out the trash. Since we didn't have a full bin in the garage, I told him it could wait until next week. So he settled back down with his tablet to watch whatever it is that he's watching. Something in Japanese, and I'm not fluent. At 8:30 CST, the stock market opens, and I open up barchart.com to check stock prices and use my piddly little Robinhood account to do some scalping. This morning I bought 12 shares of GEVO at $3.51 at 8:43 a.m. and sold the 12 shares at 8:55 for $3.56. Sometimes I do better, but I rarely have a loss. Of course, a lot happened since then. I make more scalp trading than I do writing at this point in time, but writing is more of a creative endeavor. Since my son can go into work whenever he wants, I made an early lunch of heating up leftovers around 11 o'clock, and then he finished getting ready and took off. As soon as he leaves, I have a guaranteed 5 to 6 hours of quiet in which to write, check my stats, write again, read several articles here on medium.com, laugh, giggle, and comment my way through a couple more. Then I wrap it up just in time to start dinner and housework so that when he walks through the door, I look like a productive person who's had nothing but his creature comforts on my mind since he left. Yes, he's spoiled. Oh, and when he opens the door, there's a flood of cats that follow him in, trying to trip both of us as we herd them back out with a promise of kibble. That was yesterday. Kind of fun. How was your Wednesday this week? And I did have some comments on that story. Noah said, sounds great not waking up to an alarm clock anymore. I do enjoy trading stocks too. And it was fun. You know, there is nothing like trading stocks, even if it's just on a little platform like Robinhood, to change your whole view of Mondays. Because usually Monday is like you're just dreading looking forward to it and going back to work. But when you know that the markets are going to open up at 9 o'clock, you want to be up early Monday morning and you look forward to Monday because you haven't gotten to trade for 2 weeks. I actually think it might be more like the thrill of gambling. Hmm. And Liberty said, "Sounds like a pretty fab life to me. Thanks for a peek at a typical day for you." Well, it was for a little while until until it wasn't fun anymore. Okay. Now, kiddos, let's get to the next story. I just wanted to mention one more time because I haven't talked about it. Don't think I talked about it yesterday, and I know I haven't talked about it for a little while. One of my reasons for going back over all of the articles and the stories that I wrote on medium.com is to leave a sort of video diary or video record for my children. I wish that my mother and my grandmother had left a video record of, just them talking about ordinary stuff, because I would still have those to be able to look back on and to be able to enjoy. And so I wanted to leave that behind for my own children and grandchildren so that I wouldn't be just a picture on a page somewhere, or a picture in a photograph, or a picture on a phone. They could actually hear my voice and see me talking and laughing and having a good time and doing what I enjoy. And so if you have someone or several someones that you would like to leave a video diary or a video record of, a video journal of just you talking and enjoying life, then they could enjoy that for years to come. Okay, so the very next story that I wrote is called Alvin and Noreen. And I was actually pretty proud of this story. I thought it was a sweet, sweet story. Many years ago, my uncle and his new bride had just moved into their new home. Alvin and Noreen had only been married for 2 weeks when they had their first big disagreement, and it was all because of an egg. Noreen insisted that Alvin would love her special scrambled eggs if only he'd try them. Alvin firmly told his new wife that he would only eat them poached. Noreen said she didn't know how to make poached eggs, and she was convinced that if he'd only give her scrambled eggs a chance, he'd never eat poached again. Besides this, she was not a very good cook and didn't want to learn how to cook anything other than what she was already familiar with. Alvin and Noreen argued until late in the evening, and both went to bed unhappy, with the argument unresolved. Needless to say, it was a very chilly night in the little apartment, according to my aunt. The next morning, Noreen reminded Alvin that she didn't know how to make poached eggs and that he shouldn't expect to eat poached eggs anytime soon. Alvin told her he didn't have an appetite that morning anyway and decided to pick up a donut and coffee on his way to work. Once Alvin left, Aunt Noreen began to wonder if married life was really the right thing for her. She started to consider the possibility of packing her few belongings and just going back home to her parents. Alvin was afraid to complain because he wasn't sure what Noreen was planning to do. Noreen felt that leaving Alvin would be unfair to him, but so would living with someone who couldn't even agree to eat what she wanted to cook. She decided to give it one more day, but she left her packed suitcase next to the door. When Alvin came home tired from work, he said the first thing he saw when he walked in the door with her suitcase. My aunt had made macaroni and cheese and hot dogs for supper. Alvin said he was worried, but he was afraid to complain because he wasn't sure what she was planning to do. So he ate the food on his plate and cleaned up after himself. They didn't talk over dinner, but afterwards he asked if there was anything she needed to tell him and pointed to the suitcase. Noreen said she was upset because of the previous night and felt like it was a bad sign for the marriage that he wouldn't agree to let her cook the food she knew how to prepare. Alvin agreed and said he was willing to compromise if only she wouldn't leave. This made Aunt Noreen smile a little, and she agreed to sleep on it one more night. "What's the rush?" Uncle Alvin asked her. He told her, "We've got the rest of our lives to argue over eggs." And I wrote that story and used the terms like my aunt and uncle, but I don't have an uncle named Alvin, and I don't have an aunt named Noreen. But I got comments from readers who told me that they were glad that my aunt and uncle had finally made it up, and they were glad that everything ended the way that it did. It seemed to have a happy ending. And then how do you tell your readers that the characters that you've written aren't real after you've already written that they are real? Okay, that was Alvin and Noreen. Now, the very next piece that I published was a fiction piece called Reclaiming the Future, with the subtitle, Just How Far Would You Go to Correct Climate Change? So you can see I would get my ideas, my story ideas, writing prompts from the news, from all different sources. Anything that I read, anything that I read now can cause me to think of a story idea that I want to write. So let me read this little one to you. They're all short, they're all flash fiction, so you're never going to invest a huge amount of time on any of my stories. The more John thought about the dream, the more he was convinced it was something more. Not just a dream, but a memory that was resurfacing. It just felt too real. This was the fourth night in a row that he had woken up early with the dream so vivid in his mind. Each time he dreamed it, more details became clear. The colors, people's faces, his own reactions, all gradually coming into focus, like fog dissipating in the morning sun. John began looking forward to going to sleep so that he could see the dream events one more time. Maybe this would be the night he'd figure out why he was having the dream. John was staring at the whirling vortex in front of him. As he moved closer, the memory sharpened, and he knew that when he stepped through, he would find himself in the future, about 120 years in the future to be exact. John eagerly approached and stepped into the vortex, not fearing it now as he had the first time. Everyone was at the gathering: his business partner Laura and her husband, their families, friends, and colleagues. John looked at his wife, Lachelle, standing across the room talking with Dr. Mann, foremost climatologist in 2141. Oh, I didn't read that sentence correctly. I'm sorry. John looked at his wife, Lachelle, standing across the room, talking with Dr. Mann, foremost climatologist in 2141. They were fortunate to have Dr. Mann's expertise on climate change. It was his grandfather's grandfather, Michael Mann, professor of atmospheric science at Penn State, who'd suffered such indignities and slander when he spoke out for climate change initiatives. John had met him and passed on key information from his descendant in the hopes that this last-ditch effort could literally save the planet. Lachelle caught his eye, smiled, and beckoned him over. She caught his hands and hugged him tightly. When she tilted her head back, her eyes were sparkling with joyful tears. Her 100-watt smile practically lit up the room, and John was dazzled once again. How could he have forgotten this woman? Even in a fully immersive experience, he should have been able to remember this wonderful woman. Dr. Mann laughed and shook John's hand with enthusiasm. When Lachelle spoke, her excitement was contagious. Just a little while longer, darling, and you'll be home for good. Our future will be secured. You're doing a wonderful job. We've already seen a 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. It's working, and we're all so proud of you. John's brow cleared. Yes, I remember everything now. How long have I been in the past? What's today's date? Dr. Mann replied. February 2022. Why? John asked. Well, let's see. We placed you in the time stream mid-1999. My great-grandfather had already begun working on the research material for the Observed Climate Variability and Change chapter for the IPCC report that would win a Nobel Peace Prize. So that means you've been there about 23 years in transtemporal terms, of course. To us, you've been gone momentarily. So why have I been dreaming the past few nights? Why have I been remembering? John was anxious to hear the answer. It's time to pull you back, John. Your work's done and it's time to come home. We needed to let you know gradually so you'd have a chance to finish up and, make your farewells as discreetly as possible. Do you understand? You have 1 week to wrap up your work and any personal matters. Once you return through the vortex for the last time, no one will remember you from the past. He stopped, struggled to contain himself, and then spoke in an emotion-filled voice. But know this, John. History will never forget your outstanding contribution to saving the planet Earth. Never. So when I was doing research for that story, I actually did some research from Dr. Mann. I think he's a real person today, and there really was something that he researched called Observed Climate Variability and Change, and it did win the Nobel Peace Prize. So it's fun to add in, when you're writing, to add in elements of truth, pieces of what's going on in reality, to kind of tie together your fiction and make it more believable. And so I really enjoyed doing that. And I still do. As you will see later on, because there were several stories, historical fiction pieces that I wrote, where I took events from history and talked about it from a specific point of view. And those should be coming up pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to reading those. Well, my live stream time is just about up. I was only going to do an hour of live streaming today, and I only got about 45 seconds to go. So I'm really hoping that nobody puts a question on here that I can't get to, or that I click on finish just as they're adding a question. That's never happened yet, but you never know. So I was happy to be able to come on and chat with you today. Enjoy my tea and share some of the stories that I've written, so that not only my family can enjoy it, but also people that I don't even know, total strangers that didn't read it on medium.com. And so until tomorrow, I'll see you later. Bye.